full 10-minute video showing glowing, multicolored UAP orbs outside a military base in Afghanistan. The orbs are then shot with a missile and are completely unaffected. The video is somewhat infamous, but I've only seen a 60-second or so version posted here before. There are usually comments along the lines of, these are training targets. However, in this full 10-minute version, you can see that the camera switches from FLIR to normal vision, revealing that these are multicolored glowing orbs that move in a rigid spatial relationship with each other.
I think the important context for so-called dripping UAPs is definitely there. There have been cases like Council Bluffs, Iowa, Delphos, Kansas, and of course Maury Island, where material has dripped off of UAPs and in some cases even been recovered. So that precedent does exist, but I don't think that's what we're seeing here. Maybe we can go into it a little more, but these look and behave exactly like flares on parachutes in my assessment.
Yeah, I remember this video came up a few years ago, and the shorter version. And I did do some time compression of the video so you could really see them just going down together, pretty much like flares. I will say that at around 7 minutes in the video, it does go to color, and it kind of changes from like red, orangish, purplish, but I would put that all well within the spectrum of flares.
I know I did put a little box around one. I ended up tracking two of them, the ones toward the end, and then you can kind of see them rocking back and forth. And I had the square outline of it, so it does look like it could be attached from above because it has this pendulum motion.
I looked at specifically infrared flares. I just did like a Google search for like infrared flares or something like that. And one of the first results is these Northrop Grumman LUU parachute flares. And it has a stat sheet for them and shows that the visible ones can burn for up to 4 minutes and the infrared ones can burn for up to 7 minutes. This was an 8-minute video, and I believe that we see two sets of them drop because there's one set that goes behind the hill, and then there's another one that appears. OP also talks about this idea that like a missile hit the UAPs. I think that the explanation that's been suggested that this is not a missile, but an A-10 Warthog actually releasing countermeasures in an exercise makes more sense. You actually see the chaff start to be released slightly ahead of the second impact, and the speed, commenters noted that the speed at which the object that is moving that intersects with the flares is moving too slow to be a missile. And if you watch the full video, it actually finds the A-10 Warthog later, and you can see very clearly that it's a plane that's flying around in the area. I think that this is a military exercise in Afghanistan with parachute flares and an A-10 Warthog releasing chaff or other countermeasures. It's infrared, so it might not particularly be chaff. It might be some type of infrared countermeasure.
It would be pretty wild for one missile to strike multiple targets. It's a pretty cool missile. I don't think it is.
Yeah, there was some speculation that like if it was a missile, maybe it had the warhead disabled, which is why it was able to go like through the one thing and into the other. And then people said, oh no, it's just going through the flare. And then like, why did the flare still exist? I think the flare is just a marker, like a target for the A-10 to try and know where to release the groups of chaff.
I agree with that assessment. I would want it to be kind of anomalous, but it seems that most things are pointing toward it not being, because I don't see many observables. The only one, there's no obvious means of propulsion, maybe, but it could like when you speed it up, it is falling at a rate.
Yeah.
It's interesting that the top comment here is somebody that says, my whole squad and me saw something very similar in Southern Afghan in 2013. I have chills watching this, also kind of relieved, thought we were all just super tired and having a hallucination. That, and, commenter thinks it's anomalous, and that they might have experience. I imagine they sound like they're from the military if they were in Afghan in 2013 and they have a squad. So the fact that they would look at that and not immediately also think it's flares like you guys kind of piques my interest a little bit. But if they are falling at a slow rate, then obviously that means that's probably something prosaic.
I don't know what that commenter saw. That commenter could have seen a genuine UAP. I wish we had video of that to analyze.
Yeah.
Perhaps what that commenter saw was stationary and dripping molten material. Like, that would be really cool. I always give experiencers trust. So I trust that what this person saw, they're describing accurately. And it may have been something that looks similar, or it may have been something that looks identical. My hope is that it's something similar and that it's a genuine UAP and not a flare. And that this person is describing a really cool experience they had.
Yeah, and they weren't alone with it, because the second top comment on there is somebody else saying, myself and one other saw exactly this in Afghanistan. The difference was that they shot up into the sky in sequence, one after another. We both acknowledged that what we saw and agreed we wouldn't tell anyone else because we'd get laughed at. Edit, due to people saying flares, 4 illuminated dots appeared in the sky. They appeared and moved in unison, descended slowly. I actually thought it was flares myself to begin with. They then stopped around 100 to 150 meters altitude and hovered for a couple minutes, looking like they were moving in small circles. They then gained elevation faster than anything I've ever seen move. Literally, it was like a streak of light. They disappeared either through cloud cover or lights were put out. My eyes were open to a few things that night, and I became a more open-minded person. So it's interesting you had the first two, or the two top comments of this post of people kind of saying that they've seen similar things, and then that second comment are kind of addressing the propulsion thing of non-prosaic movement. I just think it's interesting that apparently Afghanistan might be a hot spot.
Yeah, there's certainly UFOs that have been seen in Afghanistan, and I think this goes to emphasize that each case is unique, should be considered, on its own and in context, because sure, there's real UFOs that look somewhat like this, and there's flares, and military personnel have different experience and specialties. So
that's true.
There's all kinds of people that may have very limited experience, if any, with flares, particularly flares with, an exercise with a warthog shooting off chaff and stuff. Like, there's a lot of variables. Yeah, I don't necessarily discount those guys.
There's also precedent for UFOs in war zones and military operating areas. The best examples are from UFOs and Nukes by Robert Hastings, where he talks about UFOs appearing over nuclear missiles. But they do seem to be interested, assuming that there's intelligence behind them, assuming that this intelligence could be interested in human conflict. Yeah, food. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say Foo Fighters, because that's what's intriguing, because that was during World War I. Is that correct? Where they started spotting World War II. So it's interesting because it seemed like war didn't really have that many planes before then. So we were actually more in the sky. Some people have said, and of course I wasn't alive back then, but I find those cases very interesting.